This is Pavement Black.
Hi, and welcome to Pavement Black, the official podcast of the National Asphalt Pavement Association. I'm Richard Willis.
And I'm Brett Williams.
And today we're continuing our conversations on leadership. And leadership isn't something that's stagnant. It's really a journey that happens over your career, and you have to either take advantage of the opportunities you get, or you can be stagnant and let them slip by.
So today I'm really interested to learn more about being a leader of an organization that really is an organization of leaders, as well as to gain some insights of kind of the evolution of leadership, both as an individual and within an organization as you move up in leadership responsibilities.
So to help us with that conversation today, we're staying within the industry, and we're welcoming Dr. Audrey Copeland, President and CEO of the National Asphalt Pavement Association. Welcome to the podcast, Audrey. And to get things started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how your career path led you to take on the leadership role you have today?
Thanks, fellas. So glad to be here. I think most people know my background is on the technical side. Ended up studying engineering in college, and that led me down a path of getting advanced degrees because I thought there might be a chance that I wanted to be a college professor. And I think what I would say about the educational component of my career path was just doing engineering was one of the best decisions I've ever made in terms of teaching you to be a problem solver, teaching you how to approach problems. So anyways, that led me to the Federal Highway Administration with a fellowship with them, which led me to work a few years with them, which really helped me take on a national presence, I guess. It afforded me opportunities to be part of national groups and changing specifications with state departments of transportations and really just improving the way our roads are designed and built. And so NAPA saw that and recruited me over to lead the engineering team and then came into the president and CEO role. So it's been a fantastic opportunity for me. What you said at the beginning, it really is a unique role in terms of I get to work with different leaders every day and learn from them. And I never thought that this would be the role I'm in. I don't even know that trade association executive is even talked about in schools or college. But again, I feel very fortunate to be where I am and have this unique role.
So you kind of touched on it, but when you joined NAPA, you started as the vice president of the Engineering Research and Technology Department, and then made that transition to CEO and president. So I was curious if you could share some of the differences in leadership styles or responsibilities and what you've learned during that transition.
So back when I was in engineering, I would say it was really about being able to lead more project-specific things or task-oriented things or things where you're wanting to have a specific outcome. So, for example, helping lead the partnership with the state asphalt pavement associations, where we had distinct projects that were promoting the benefits of asphalt pavements, as well as ensuring the competitiveness of asphalt and improving it and things like that. Another thing was working on advancing pavement performance when Kevin Kelly was chairman. You had this focus area where you're looking at really improving performance. When I transitioned into the president and CEO role, I'll admit at first you'd have this vision thinking, I'm just going to get to think about the future of asphalt all day and, get to think about this bigger picture of asphalt. And there's a little bit of naivety there in the sense that you do think about that, obviously, but really your time is spent managing people or leading people and getting them to effectively work as teams and work in an organizational environment effectively, and also ensuring that organization is running well. And that can be a variety of things in terms of strategy, setting the tone of the organization, performance management, of course, financials, revenue, expenses, all of that type of stuff. And your scope really does broaden when you come into the executive role. And then there's a shift in terms of what's most important. And really what's most important is the people, and the organization and the industry itself. And then it boils down to things that are relevant in both positions, like who needs to know this? Who do I communicate with? So again, the communication skills are important.
So earlier you mentioned that humility is a really important quality in a leader. Besides that, what are maybe two or three other qualities that you see in leaders and you think of are critical for people who are in charge of leading people?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, setting the tone, which I already mentioned. As the leader of an organization, it is your responsibility to set the tone that will also help influence the culture of that organization. And so it is being positive, and not positive in the sense that everything's always rosy, but looking at the opportunities, looking at the good side of things, and being able to reframe challenges, because there's always going to be challenges that come along. And so being able to reframe that as an opportunity. And then the second thing I would say is decisiveness. And it doesn't always have to be like immediate decisiveness, but you have to be able to make a decision. And a lot of times you got to be able to make it in a reasonable amount of time. The staff is looking to you for guidance. I'm one of those that I like to gather from other people before I make my decision. So I do think that's an important component. But at the end of the day, you have to make the decision to keep things going and in motion. So I think decisiveness is key as well. And then I guess the final thing beyond humbleness, again, I already said it, but the communication, knowing who needs to know what, pausing, and this is something that I still sometimes struggle with, is just taking that time and pause to think through who needs to know this, what's going to help me make this decision, even political wise. If I make this decision, is it going to impact this person? So thinking down the road, thinking down that chain of what's going to happen when you make a decision, or playing out the different scenarios. So taking that time to have that thought process is a great skill as well.
So we've touched on your role and how you're working with leaders in our industry on a regular basis. I'm curious after that, if you could maybe share some of the common trends or qualities in leaders in our industry and in your daily work and interacting with these folks all the time.
So, we have a amazing industry in every state, every size company, from small one plant companies all the way up to large international publicly traded companies. And so I do feel very fortunate, and also family owned, employee owned companies that report to boards and stockholders. So I feel very fortunate to have that breadth of leadership observations. And I would say for me, observing how they realize their place. So they know, again, that they are setting the tone for the organization. They are making high-level decisions, broad decisions that are looking at the health of the organization and the longevity of the organization, and they're not micromanaging, right? So they know their place, and they surround themselves with the best people who can run the company or carry out the operations or get the projects, bidding and estimating. So knowing your place and knowing what level you need to be at. And then the other thing I would say is, again, being able to talk through the scenarios. And so I really use our board members. When I have an issue, I will call, especially once they reach the officer level, I will call on our officers and I will talk through stuff with them. And it always is very helpful. They'll think of something that I had not thought of. And so being able, again, to quickly think through the different scenarios or consequences or how it might impact something. I think another thing that's also really interesting to me, especially with the family-owned companies, is how they think about their succession planning and the longevity of their industry, how they diversify, how they move into other areas of revenue streams or markets. And I guess what that really leads to for me is realizing when to get help. You don't have to know everything. Don't be afraid to use third parties, right? Don't be afraid to use a consultant to help you with something. There's consultants that help these companies with succession planning, or if they're weak in an area, they'll use a third party to come in and help them. And so that's really helped us at NAPA because we're a small staff, learning that we can use expertise in accounting or human resources or things like that really help us, where I'm not spinning my wheels on it, or our vice president of finance and operations is not spinning her wheels on it forever. And then the final thing I would say too is, along with that, is the peer groups. So there's peer groups within our industry of kind of medium-sized companies where they come together to learn from each other. And thankfully, our members value that so much that they allow me to be part of peer groups for trade associations. And that has been immensely helpful. So, looking to others, not being scared of getting help, looking at the long term, and then also staying at this higher level and then surrounding yourself with the best people.
So while people don't typically think of the industry as a group that changes, there have been a lot of changes since we have all entered the asphalt industry. How do you adapt to change? And what advice would you give to emerging leaders in a space that is changing rapidly?
So I think first and foremost, you got to get comfortable with change. And that's probably, being an engineer, that's probably a challenging thing for me that sometimes I still feel like I struggle with. But first of all, you have to accept that it is always changing. You need to be comfortable with change and embrace it. Again, realize what the opportunities are. So reframing, instead of it being, oh my gosh, this came up and I wasn't expecting this, reframing it as, what is the opportunity here? What can I learn from this? And then again, how can I get help, with dealing with this? Who can I go to get help? And so I think as a leader, having things outside of your job that challenge you and that push you, help you with your job, and especially adapting to change. Being able outside of your job to have challenges, whether you're going to hike a mountain you've never hiked, or you're running a race, or you're reading a book or writing a book, or setting goals for yourself that kind of bring you out of your comfort zone, help you adapt to change as a leader, pushing yourself. Having a sounding board, having someone that you can talk to, because even though you do need to reframe things and look for the opportunities, there are times when you just need to vent. You just need to have someone that you just like, gosh, I'm struggling with this, and then just get it off your chest. And then that way you're letting it go. You're having that release. One of the things that really helped me this year in 2024 for me was I read a book. I read David Goggins' book. I think it's called You Can't Hurt Me. And he's a former Navy SEAL, an extreme athlete, marathoner. And essentially what his book, for me at least, what his book boiled down to was, it's always going to be hard. And especially if you're operating at a high level. If you've made it to the level of a CEO or even an executive, a VP, director, you have made it to this level for a reason. You can do hard things. And there's always going to be hard things. It's always going to be hard. So get comfortable with that. And that's the reason you're at that level. And I don't mean hard like it's bad. I just mean you're at this level because you can do challenging things, because you are a problem solver, because you're a leader. And accept that and get comfortable with it. And then that kind of frees you. Instead of struggling against it, it frees you to go to that next level.
So I want to stay on that topic of change, but kind of a twist, and just see what you think in terms of change related to leadership. I know technology and a number of things are driving change in the industry, but when you look at leadership, do you see that as evolutionary, what a leader is, and is that changing, and what are some of the things you see that are making it change?
I would say it is a little bit of both. I would say the fundamental things that make folks good leaders are probably not changing a lot in terms of the people skills and strategy skills and things like that. I think what is changing is just the broadening of things that you have to think through. Our world in terms of information and technology advancement is moving so rapidly. It continues to speed up through my lifetime. And I don't even know what's going to happen through my daughter's lifetime, right? I have a 5-year-old. For example, I lived when there was no internet, right? But I can't imagine. And now we have artificial intelligence. And so anyways, the point is things are just continuing to rapidly develop in terms of technology, digitization. And I think with that comes this broadening. So you've got the technical side of things. You've also got the social side of things. There are things that are happening with us being able to record everything now that are brought much more to the forefront that we need to think through as leaders. So you have to be able to quickly assess, how are you going to handle this? How are you going to address this? You need to be prepared as a leader for any type of, I don't know if PR crisis is too strong of a word, but it's the reality, right? You just don't know what could happen.
So all three of us were the beneficiaries of some kind of scholarship or fellowship program, and it helped us get to where we are today by planting some of those seeds and giving us early opportunities. In 2024, one of the major efforts that NAPA Ref led was developing the Rhodes Scholars Program at Auburn University and the National Center for Asphalt Technology. Why do you think it's important to be a part of programs like this, which support and help develop future leaders for the industry?
Oh, I think it's very important. First of all, let me just say this industry is phenomenal. Within a year, we raised $3 million to endow this scholarship that will benefit graduate students in the asphalt industry. And so I guess what I would say is, and really it's just from my own personal experience, I am embedded in this industry because of scholarships. Okay, I received an Eisenhower Fellowship from the Federal Highway Administration, which I had already done some asphalt work in my master's, but at that point, I didn't get enough exposure to where I was committed. So I wanted to move away from it. I thought, oh, I want to go back to structural engineering. And so it wasn't until I got the Eisenhower Fellowship and then I moved up here to Washington, D.C. to their labs that I really became embedded in the industry. It brought me out of the comfort zone of Nashville, Tennessee, and it introduced me to all these national experts in this area. So the exposure, right? And then second, I received an Association of Asphalt Paving Technologists scholarship. And what really impressed me about that was I was just, again, getting into the industry. So those folks didn't really know me except from my application, but they pretty much gave me, I can't remember what it was at the time, but it was either like $3,000 or $5,000. And they told me, you can spend it how you want, whether you need living expenses or books, travel, whatever. And the fact that they put that trust in me, it was huge for me. And then, of course, it gave me the opportunity to go to their meeting and get exposure to more experts in the industry. So anyways, I think the point is it is such goodwill, these scholarships, and it can truly have a meaningful impact on students. I think the scholarships are the key as to why I'm in this industry. And I have flourished in this industry because not only did it help me financially, but it's a vote of confidence. It's a vote of, hey, we believe in you and we value you. We're going to give you this money as a student. And then I start seeing the influence now of others. So now I have all these other folks in the industry coming and telling me how NAPA scholarships, state asphalt pavement scholarships, NCAT scholarships, FHWA benefited them. I'm sitting across from one right now. Brett Williams on our staff is a beneficiary of this industry's generosity, with Mr. Bob Thompson being such a strong believer in Michigan Tech University. And that's just something I'm so proud of. The same thing with Richard. Richard's graduate school was paid for, I'm sure, thanks to this industry. And between Brett and Richard right now, we have two of the foremost experts on asphalt pavements and technology sitting here at NAPA. And so that right there for our members is huge. And I'm so happy that this association values that technical expertise. And I'm allowed to work with engineers and have this engineering team. And So anyways, obviously a big believer in education and proponent of scholarships. And thankfully, we have a very generous industry.
Another organization I was curious to learn more from you is the Women of Asphalt. It's an organization I think that's really grown and taken off in recent years. And I was hoping maybe you could share a little bit about the process of setting up that organization, as well as share some of what Women of Asphalt is doing to help or support women in the industry.
Sure. Yeah. That organization really started as an idea, which is great to have an idea and then to see it come to fruition and success. And it goes back to Amy Miller, who is now the executive director of the Asphalt Contractors Association of Florida. And she saw a need to raise the profile of women in the industry, but also create an opportunity where women know that they have a home in this industry. And I'll admit, I know I've said this numerous times, when she first brought it up, I was like, oh, I don't know. But we took it to the NAPA board and they were really excited. That's what I'll say. Again, this industry never ceases to surprise me. Just when you think that they might push back on something, they embrace it and they were all for it. And so with that, Amy got to work finding other key women in the industry that she knew could help lead this and make it a success. So she tapped into the Asphalt Institute. She tapped into some of our members who had fantastic women on their staff, whether they were in sales or leading organizations. And then we started kind of deciding, what is this going to be? How are we going to have members? And so it just grew from there. We decided we did want it to be like a standalone organization, although it would have immense support from NAPA and the Asphalt Institute. And then we started soliciting sponsors so we could actually have events. We hosted our first event at the World of Asphalt. And really what you're doing here, we really brought in leaders and highlighted leadership and how important this is to the industry. And then we decided we wanted to be individual memberships rather than companies. Any woman could sign up and be a part of this. It was very important to us that it was free in the beginning, so it was accessible for anyone. And then within a matter of, 2 years or something, we grew to 2,000 members. We were pretty much growing like by the 1,000 every year. So now we have a full board. We're an established organization. We just hired our first executive director, Britton Heisler. So we're very excited about that. We are now on our 4th president of the organization with Ashley Batson, and now hosting a Women of Asphalt Day along with World of Asphalt. And again, just the tremendous support from the industry, but at the same time, hard work, being able to decide that this is important. We're going to put our time and effort into this.
As we come to a close, I've got one more question that I'd like to put out in front of you. And it's something that I guess sometimes leaders think about, sometimes they don't. But looking at your career and the work that you're doing, is there a certain legacy that you hope to leave as a leader?
I guess if I had to boil it down in terms of what I care about as well, and how much I care about this industry and the people I work with, the NAPA staff, I think it could be boiled down to she cared. She truly cared. She had to make some difficult decisions at times, and she may have had to do some things or make decisions that not everybody liked. But at the end of the day, I know she weighed the options available to her, and I know she cared, and I know she did her best to look at it from everyone's perspective.
Audrey, really appreciate you taking the time to give us all of that insight and share kind of your experience. I think the conversation's been great and I've learned a lot, so I hope everybody else has as well, but really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no, this is a great time. I enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate what y'all do with the Pavement Black podcast. I know this takes a lot of time and effort and thought. By doing this podcast, you are demonstrating your leadership in the industry, and just really appreciate you broadening the perspective of people within and without the industry, not only about asphalt pavements, but about leadership, workforce. I know political was one of your topics. And so you're doing great work in terms of educating people and opening their perspectives, which I think is one of the greatest things about podcasts. I like podcasts because I do really feel that they provide a greater perspective for me. So anyways, thank you both, Richard and Brett, for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the main things from today's conversation that really resonated with me is just how important it is to realize the resources that you have around you as a leader, and knowing and being confident in yourself, in the fact that you don't know everything, and that having a strong peer group and having strong coworkers and having an industry that welcomes questions and wants to be part of the conversation is so critical, really, when you think about the responsibility of a leader and how you tackle some of those responsibilities. And I really grasp that. It's just how important the people around you are and how that can really help you succeed in that mission.
You're absolutely right, Brett. Like, one of the things I wrote down in my notes from this conversation was just 4 words: get help when needed. And I think it is a sign of leadership to have that self-awareness to realize when you need help, and then have the confidence to go and get it. I know that's something that I have struggled with a lot at times, because you sometimes think, how will people look at me differently if I go out and admit that I've got this weakness or that I need this help? But the reality is, it shows your humanity. It gives people the opportunity to step up, which I think is a sign of a leader, giving people that ability to advance or showcase their strengths. But it's hard. It's a tough thing to do, but it's definitely something that, as we talk about this topic, should be seen as a strength and not a weakness.
Thanks for listening to Pavement Black. Visit asphaltpavement.org/podcast to find more episodes, suggest a topic or guest, become a sponsor, or learn more about NAPA. Pavement Black is produced and copyrighted by the National Asphalt Pavement Association. Music by Colleague. As always, thanks to the dedicated workforce connecting diverse communities all across America.